We're looking right now at the posterior forearm. The common origin of the posterior forearm is going to be the lateral epicondyle. Even though this looks like it's on the medial side, remember we are out of anatomical position. So if we were to turn it this way, we'd be in anatomical position. You can see this is the lateral side. But we turn it around to show the posterior, this is still lateral because we're no longer in anatomical position. The common action of most of the muscles on the posterior forearm is going to be extension of the hand. The common innervation of all of the muscles in the back of the arm is going to be the radial nerve, no exceptions. So let's go ahead and start looking at our individual muscles. The first one we're going to see is the only one on this layer that does not originate on the lateral epicondyle. You can see that this muscle here, the most lateral one, actually starts on the arm. This is brachioradialis. Brachio meaning arm, radialis is on the radial side. Brachioradialis is innervated by radial nerve, just like all of the posterior arm muscles. It's the only one that crosses the joint, and because it crosses the joint, it is going to have an action on the elbow joint, which means this is going to be a flexor of the forearm. Also, because it rotates around, it is going to have a rotational action. This is medial rotation, and if we put these two actions together, flexion and medial rotation, we have our beer drinker's muscle. Okay, that is our brachioradialis. I wish I had a real beer to demonstrate that. Okay. Next, we're going to look at the muscles that start on the lateral epicondyle. We see two muscles together right here. These two muscles are both extensors. They both go down to the carpal bones, and they are both on the radial side. So they are both called Extensor Carpi Radialis. This one here has a long tendon, so it's Extensor Carpi Radialis Longus. The one next to it with the shorter tendon would be Extensor Carpi Radialis Brevis. They are next to Brachioradialis. They come down and insert. Extensor Carpi Radialis Longus is going to insert on the base of the second metacarpal, and Extensor Carpi Radialis Brevis is going to insert on the base of the third metacarpal. Moving next in order, Brachioradialis, Extensor Carpi Radialis Longus, Extensor Carpi Radialis Brevis. We see a thick bundle here with multiple tendons. This is an extensor of multiple digits, so we call it Extensor digitorum. Extensor digitorum extends digits 2, 3, 4, and 5 as a group. If we go all the way over to the end here on the ulnar side, this is our ulnar bone here, we have an extensor that goes to the carpal bone on the ulnar side, Extensor Carpi Ulnaris. I hope you're noticing a pattern where the name tells you a lot of information about the muscle. So Extensor Carpi Ulnaris inserts at the base of the fifth metacarpal. So quick question for you, what is the innervation of Extensor Carpi Ulnaris? It's got ulnar in the name. It does, but keep in mind the big rule is it is on the posterior side, so it's innervated by radial nerve. That's a really good trick question. The other muscle we were looking at on the anterior side, Flexor Carpi Ulnaris, was the one that was innervated by ulnar nerve. Make sure you see the difference between your Flexor Carpi Ulnaris on the anterior side and your Extensor Carpi Ulnaris on your posterior side. In addition to our Extensor Carpi Radialis Longus and Brevis, Extensor digitorum, and Extensor Carpi Ulnaris, we have two more extensors we need to look at. On this model, we don't see the extensor indices, but we do see the tendon of it, which is right here. This is the tendon of extensor indices. It extends your index finger, only this one. If we look over here between our Extensor digitorum and Extensor Carpi Ulnaris, we see a very long muscle here. This is the tendon. This is Extensor digiti minimi. Okay. So this is an additional extensor. I'm going to show you something kind of fun with the fingers. Okay. If we take our 4 fingers and we take our naughty finger and we hold it flat like this, can you see how this is held flat? We have, can you see that? We have an additional extensor indices. We have an additional extensor here, extensor digiti minimi. But because our 4 fingers are interlocked with extensor digitorum, if this one is locked, this one is almost impossible to lift on its own. So again, I could use that beer drinker's muscle because this is a great bar trick. But going back to our video, those are the main extensors on the back of the arm. I'm going to pull off my Brachioradialis, Extensor, Carpi, Radialis, Longus, and Brevis and show you a deep muscle here. This deep muscle on the posterior, on the cadaver we would simply move the muscles apart to see it. This is called supinator, and this is one of 2 muscles that supinate the forearm. You remember the other one was biceps brachii. This one is just called supinator. Okay? Nobody gets that wrong. Now, as we move down, there are 3 little muscles right here that I'd like to point out. These 3 muscles are actually extrinsic thumb muscles, and what they do is they move the thumb, but they are not in the hand itself. They are extrinsic. The bellies are all the way up here in the forearm. This first one, the farthest one out, is AB abductor pollicis longus. Abductor because the farthest muscle out always does abduction. Pollicis goes to the thumb, and longus because it is extrinsic. It has very long tendon. Next to that, we have 1, 2 muscles. These are both extensors. This makes sense because the posterior of the arm is the extensor compartment. We have extensor pollicis brevis, and the one next to it with the very long tendon is extensor pollicis longus. These muscles, abductor pollicis longus, extensor pollicis brevis, and extensor pollicis longus are going to come down and form the borders of this little divot in the hand called the anatomical snuff box. What you find at the base of the anatomical snuff box is the radial artery right there. The other structure we see on the back of the arm is our extensor retinaculum, and you'll recall that was continuous with the flexor retinaculum on the front of the arm. And I think that just about covers our posterior forearm